What's up, good people? It's J Ray, the co-host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show.
Good evening and welcome back to Q Points, your favorite podcast for all things Black music related, dropping the needle on Black music history. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
My name is J Ray, also known by my government. My name is J Ray, also known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. What's happening, people?
Listen, if your brain hasn't been buffering like J Ray's just now, and your Twitter timeline is out of sync, but you're here with us right now, it's gonna be okay. Things have been weird. Just be thankful you're not stuck on a plane or a train or in a thunderstorm somewhere. You're here with us right now, so we are so happy to see you. J Ray, what's the business, man? How you been? How have you been?
Oh, Sir Daniel. So much to check in on. I will definitely get into that in this next segment. Yeah. But generally, I am well. How are you doing?
I can say this. I say the same thing. I share the same sentiments, and I think both of us kind of are like, we're doing this middle-aged thing, and I'm sure a lot of you out there can relate. When we'll catch up on that a little bit later. But J Ray, please share with the folks how they can maintain contact with us and never ever miss out on an episode of Q Points or whatever it is we're doing.
Check it out, y'all. So please be sure that y'all are fully subscribed to Q Points. If you are tuning into the show and you're like, I want to get all the stuff that they talk about, including the show notes for this show, you need to go ahead and join the newsletter. The newsletter is going to be back for the new year tomorrow. So we're super excited about that. So make sure that you sign up for the newsletter. Also, subscribe. So we got some new. Sir Daniel done did a mix for the Insiders Max members. It's so hot. And in order for you to get it, you have to subscribe and become an Insiders Max member of Q Points. You can do that by heading over to our website at qpoints.com and just click on that subscribe button. And if you are like, listen, I think those guys are dope, I just want to give them, you know what I'm saying? Show them a little love. You can leave us a tip. You can go on over on Patreon, leave Q Points a tip. Exactly. Did we show you a little shoulder? You know what I'm saying? And you can leave us a tip over on Patreon. And last but certainly not least, you can buy, see that shirt that DJ Sir Daniel has on? The toys, bikes, video games, fresh new kicks. Now, that was a special. That was a special for the holiday. That ain't up no more. But you can buy other stuff. So going over to the store, it was limited. Going over to the store, store.qpoints.com, and you can buy some fresh new stuff over there. So yeah, that's what they can do.
I love it. let's give a shout out. You know, I love all of our Q Points insiders, but this most recent Q Point insider has a special place in my heart. He's definitely a good friend, and I know a lot of times you hear on the internet about stop worrying about your friends supporting you and your endeavors online or your business or whatever. And that's true. But it feels extra special when somebody that you do know supports you. And I want to shout out Gil Shannon up in Chicago for becoming the latest Q Point insider. So be like Gil. Be fresh and fly and staying up on everything Q Points related and become a Q Points insider. Gil is about to get down with that mix. And that mix is specially done for tonight's episode of of Q Points, where we're speaking regarding 90s girl groups. And Trey, and I want to shout out everybody in the chat tonight. We got Trey. Trey's been rocking his tote bag, and I see Wani in the building. Big Mike is in the building. Mark McPherson. You know, all our people are with us tonight, and it makes me feel so good. And I know they're spreading the good word about Q Points. So please welcome, and we're so glad that you're here, safe and sound, listening to Q Points this evening. So, speaking of being in that number and still being here, I'm happy to be here. But J Ray, I'm especially happy to see you here because it's been a weird week for you, huh?
It has been a weird week. So check it, y'all. Listen to your body. Is the my message for the week. So what y'all don't know is after last week's show, I began to feel some weirdness in my chest, in the heart's area. And Sir Daniel, that is not a place where you want to feel things. You want to feel your heart beating, and that's it. Like, but I started to feel like a little bit of pain, right? And I went to the doctor on Monday, and they did an EKG and they saw something. Y'all, my eye. Listen, I was giving a Fred Sanford. I was so scared, like I was going to go see Elizabeth. It was so frightening. So I was in the emergency. So I was sent from the urgent care to the emergency room. And good news is I'm fine. They done did all the blood work. They tested the ticker. They did all the things. And the doctor said the words, "You are not having a heart attack. We don't know what happened. You know, could be stress, but it wasn't a heart attack. Your heart's fine. Blood work looks good. Your cholesterol's too high. Handle that." So I was scared. Like, I was so scared. And so this week has really been, I've been since Monday, Sir Daniel, just trying to be more mindful about how I work, about how I engage, because what's most important for me is that I'm here. And the way that I can be here is by putting less pressure on myself. And so I am learning to do that. And so that's my note for folks tonight is show yourself grace and listen to your body and go get yourself checked out if you feel anything.
You know, you're absolutely right. And if you know J Ray like I know J Ray, you know J Ray is a workhorse. You know, J Ray puts 150% into everything that he does. And sometimes it's to the detriment of other things to be taken care of. But I, like you, J Ray, I also had not a scare per se, but I wasn't telling people this, but I was having these dizzy spells, you know, which I found very weird. And I recently had a checkup as well, and I told my doctor, and you know, I got the same thing, like, you're fine, nothing looks weird in the blood except your LDL, your bad cholesterol. So, but that doesn't necessarily coincide with the dizziness, but it's something that I have to keep monitoring. And I'm like you, at this age, we can't take anything for granted. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with here in Atlanta, a very prominent and well respected gospel gospel artist here in Atlanta, passed away at the very young age of 44.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about Kevin Lemons.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Lemons passed away of a heart attack, if I'm not mistaken, and is much younger than us.
Mm-hmm.
And that, whenever I hear things about that, things like that, peers passing away at such young ages, that always, it's always a reminder, like, hey, take care of ourselves, do what we need to do. Show yourself some grace and space, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And J. Ray and I talk about this all the time, and I hope that you, listening and watching, that you also have a friend, a confidant that you talk to about these health matters.
Mm-hmm.
Because while we're sharing, news about music and, sharing cue points with each other and say, hey, did you listen to the last episode? Hey, by the way, have you been to the doctor recently? Have you had your checkup? Because listen, we got to check in on each other big time now more than ever. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing well, J. Ray, and that you are not out here showing your butt like certain hip hop legends who probably needs to get checked up and checked in somewhere on their own. But we're going to talk about on However Comma, and we were unable to do However Comma this past week because J. Ray was dealing with his health. So I know you're going to show us some grace and space for that, because health comes first. But oh boy, we got so much to catch up on However Comma. R. Kelly is back in the news. Keith Murray is showing his behind all over the place. We've got so much to talk about. But I know, J. Ray, tonight you wanted to speak specifically about a young man by the name of TK, and you were schooling me on this epic drama going around with TK. Please tell me let us everybody know about TK.
Yeah, so one of the things that was so interesting is I got wind of a tweet thread from TK. So to give y'all some backstory, because if you're listening to However Comma, if you're listening to Q Points, if you're listening to Q Points, you probably don't know who TK is. So let me give you a high level rundown. TK, 3-4 years ago, TK was an up and coming 16-year-old rapper. I didn't know anything about him at that time because 1, he was doing drill, 2, he was doing he was young, so I ain't had nothing to do with TK. But anyway, he was convicted of committing a crime and was on house arrest. Decided that he was going to cut off his house arrest bracelet and go on the run. And so he was on a house arrest due to participating in some sort of robbery or something. But then he cut off the ankle bracelet, went on a race, and in that process, allegedly was part of someone died. Not saying that he still got to go to trial for that, but this child made a song about it. And that's when he blew up. He made a song called The Race. You can watch the video. It's still on YouTube. And TK is literally rapping about the crimes, the alleged crimes that he allegedly committed while on the run. And so they arrested TK. And TK was convicted and is in jail. So anyway, that's the really short story of TK. So TK's been in prison. He was convicted and sentenced to 55 years for that robbery because someone died during that robbery. He actually got more time than the other people, right? Yikes. So he got 55 years. This is a child, right? So he's going to be in his 60s when he, or right about 60 when he's able to be released. But anyway, on January 5th, he took to the Twitter. I don't know how the people use Twitter in prison, but apparently that's a thing.
So, they do it all in prison. Right. Go ahead. We'll talk about that.
So he said in the Twitter, I really just need one chance at adulthood. I bet If I was a little white kid, they wouldn't give me no 55 years for a crime I was alleged to play the most insignificant role in when I was 16. They would have rightfully argued that my mind wasn't fully developed and gave me rehabilitation and a second chance at adulthood. He also said one of my co-defendants was a white girl who was 16, just like me. They didn't certify her as an adult, but they certified me and Pimp, that's the other person who participated, as adults. Pimp got 30. I got 55. She ended up getting 10 years of probation without no deal. That girl home right now. So I was reading this and thinking, young man, young man. At no point in this entire experience have I heard any repent, any feeling sorry, anything to the respect of, okay, yeah, listen, I did some messed up stuff, right? And not only that, why are we doing this on Twitter? Why are we doing this on Twitter? I need this young man to work on himself and figure this. It was just a mess. And I'm like, what?
So in TK, well, not even defense, but TK was correct. The frontal lobe of human beings is not fully formed until well after the age of 25. So he's correct about that. However, I do think he is somebody, he must have learned that reading them psychology books that they have there in prison. So he's like, oh, this sounds good. So let me go ahead and put it out there. And he's not completely wrong. At the same time, I'm gonna speak in that Black mama voice. Now, what do all Black kids told? All Black kids get the talk.
Yep.
You have to do twice as better to get half as much as the other counterparts. You are going to get more time than that young white girl. Absolutely, you're going to get more time. So I don't know if this generation thinks that they're beyond that, but I think it still rings true. And I don't know, maybe somebody failed him and didn't give him the talk. I don't know. But as far as what you were saying, J. Ray, about how was he tweeting from prison, we got prisoners that got whole TikTok accounts. They've got Instagram accounts. They're creating content. They're creating content in prison.
Oh, they're doing OnlyFans in prison
and making money off of it. So, and it's all due to people risking their jobs and their lives and their freedom to smuggle all this stuff into prisons. Phones are getting smuggled into prison all the time. So people are creating whole albums from behind bars using these phones. So it's very possible him tweeting is the bare minimum of what they're doing behind prison. So yeah, there's a lot going on behind prison, and maybe somebody will. There was a thing for a while where a lot of, especially young women that were working in these detention centers, every time you turned around, especially here in Georgia, every time you turned around, there was a whole slew of them getting caught, going to prison because they were smuggling contraband into the jails, or they were also ending up pregnant.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's that. But if we will really go in on However Comma about this kind of stuff. So This is the kind of content you'll get on However Comma. It does have a music slant, but we talk about all the other juicy stuff that's going on in our world right now. And Twitter is definitely on fire. My timeline is in a strange loop right now. Okay. It's crazy. I will see like the same 10, 15 tweets over and over again. It's wild. I am happy Azalea Banks is back on Twitter, but I don't know, something is crazy going on about the Twitter algorithm right now.
Yeah, I haven't been paying too much attention to Twitter this week. I'll probably get into my Twitter bag this weekend and see what's really going on. But one of the things, Sir Daniel, that you actually brought to my attention, and this is actually some really good music news, right?
Yeah.
So this year, hip hop's turns 50. And one of the things that has happened over the years is there hasn't been a lot of education to rappers about rapping, about the history, because now we're so far along, right? Before we learned all of our hip hop history by one experiencing it or having these stories being told. But now we're at the point where if folks want to learn it, they got to go to school. You know what I'm saying? They got to get some school. So you actually brought to my attention the fact that Lupe Fiasco is going to be teaching. So Lupe Fiasco is going to be teaching rap. But he's part of MIT's MLK Visiting Professor Program. And he was announced as part of their 2022 to 2023 appointments. So he is in the arts and humanities area. He's listed on the website and everything. And this is super dope. So he's actually going to be in the classroom teaching these folks that take his class about rapping and hip hop history, and that was super dope to hear.
I love it. I love it. There have been sprinkled about. There have been a few other people that have taught courses on hip hop. Hip hop has ended up. Remember, there was a course on Little Kim, and one woman's a professor had a course on Little Kim. So it makes total sense. We've been around for 50 years now. We've got a big museum about to be opened up with all kinds of artifacts and paraphernalia. And now it just makes sense that people are going to be able to have a full syllabus and learn history about the culture. A lot of people borrow from the culture because it looks shiny and it's cute and it's fun, but they don't know context. And so a lot of times that breeds, if you don't know context and you borrow from the culture, that breeds a lot of and not envy, but it breeds a lot of bad blood. It breeds a lot of horrific bad relations in the communities that are borrowing from things. And I just think it's about time, and I'm glad that Lupe is a part of it. There are certain people that can be trusted with the culture, and I think he can probably prove himself as one of those people.
Yeah. And in addition to him, Billboard, so actually you can read about both of these if you join the newsletter. We'll make sure that those links are in there for you. But Mickey Factz as well. So Mickey Factz has launched a school. It's called Pendum Inc., which I thought was really fun. So pen, dumb, and then ink. And then so it looks like the courses that'll be available for this school, which is really dope, is going to be there'll be one teaching rap, rap techniques, stuff like that. But some of the classes are it's 6 courses. Rap theory, advanced rap techniques, which I think is really dope. Like I would love to see what that is. Rhymecology, which sounds super dope. Mickey Money class, so I guess Mickey's going to be teaching about money in the game. Battle rap is a course, and then a content creation class. That so $2,000, you get all of that.
That's perfect, and I love it. So this got me to thinking real quick, J-Ray. Okay, on your way to matriculate through whatever university, and you're getting your degree in hipology, or whatever, who would you want your academic advisor to be? Ooh. Mine, I'll tell you mine off the rip. Mine is KRS-One. KRS-One is my academic advisor. Who would you want to be your academic advisor?
Ooh, so I think I want Queen Latifah to be my academic advisor. She, you know what I'm saying? She would give me a little bit of that business, and she would lean in a little bit, be like, I don't think that's for you. I think you need to move over here and get up into this film. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can see her. Yeah. Like, I would definitely want Queen Latifah.
And can't you see them critiquing our freestyles like, Yeah, so I heard your freestyle in class today, and you know that shit was whack, right? Yeah, I expected more out of you. And I think you need to go back to the drawing board. If I don't see improvement in my class, you will be on academic suspension.
Can you imagine? It would be like they would be critiquing our wordplay and critiquing our
Mm-hmm.
metaphors and all types of stuff. Just bad.
Rule number 1: no biting. No biting. Rule number 2, and of course, you're going to have to talk about contracts,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if you're in a group, and study all the great groups over history. But tonight we are studying great girl groups. And you know, we've talked about girl groups. Last year we spoke about girl groups and how there weren't any.
Yep.
But now we've got Flo, we've got the Black Betties, we're seeing a little increase in some black girl groups coming back. You know, we got to give a shout out to the greatest of all times, Destiny's Child,
Mm-hmm.
TLC,
Yep.
the Supremes, you know, but there's something special about the girl groups of the 90s. There's just we're talking about it. I already saw a theme. There's a theme of sexual liberation, cheating and infidelity, and what else were we singing about? And love. I mean, just relationships in general.
Yes.
And I really think that those types of things made for classic records from the girl groups of the 90s. But tonight we're speaking about some specific girl groups that were right there on the precipice of blowing up. They're all over Video Soul. They're all over MTV. You know, we know their songs. They're bumping all over the radio. But
it didn't happen.
It didn't go pop like it should have, you know? And so tonight we're talking about, you want to run the whole list, or we want to take them one by one?
Let's go ahead and let's do them one by one and let y'all weigh in on these. But this is exciting. So one of the other interesting things, Sir Daniel, as we get into this, the 90s were unique in that we still had duos. Like there were several duos. And y'all might be like, one duo that we're not talking about is Janae, and we're not talking about Janae because they made it, right? They surpassed a certain threshold, and we have some other stuff around Janae that we need to talk about. So they are coming. We have not forgotten Janae, but you know, we had these duos. So it's duos and trios tonight, and so I'm excited. So the first one is an interesting case. So Changing Faces.
Cassandra Lucas and Charisse Rose, Changing Faces, out of New York. I just remember Changing Faces out the gate. Like they had a very unique poise to their performances. It was a very stripped down look, one piece, flowing long gown, form fitting, and then you know they're very chanteuse like, and they're singing softly. You're fooling around, fooling around, and those songs just automatically just took off. Like fooling around, get up, ghetto UT out, and
Stroke You Up. That was their first single out the gate, you know?
Was that okay? Yes, you're right. Stroke You Up was first, and
then Fooling Around came next.
Fooling Around. Then they made lots of various appearances in rap videos. I think one of the most important videos was Biggie's One More Chance video. Because if you were anybody in hip hop and R&B at that time, you were in that video. And Changing Faces was in that video. A lot of the girl groups were in that video. Yeah.
So, you know, they were kind of an interesting case. So They, of course, they sang. Okay, so they got their start. Apparently, they sang background for Sybil. So that was how they met and how they formed. So they formed organically, and they were singing background for Sybil. They at that
which
time,
Sybil?
Sybil, Sybil, don't make me over, Sybil.
So okay.
Yep. Oh, not Sable. you think about Sweet Sable.
So well, she was Sable and Sybil. Yeah.
Yep.
So you're right.
And so, for better or for worse, their career is forever tied to R. Kelly. R. Kelly wrote their biggest hits, and
he's singing on them too.
And I mean, I still hear Changing Faces on R&B radio. They're staples of R&B radio, but you forget. Like, it's so funny. I went back and we were doing research for all of these groups, and like so many of these groups have like some sort of connection. They either toured with or did something with R. Kelly, because this was kind of his time. And Changing Faces was one of them. But I think this one's hard. I don't know. Could Changing Faces have... Why didn't they go? I think it was just the changing, from my perspective, it was just the changing of music. Like, R&B changed so much that hip hop was the big thing. I don't know that there wasn't a room for a group like Changing Faces. I can't see where they would have fit in the 2000s.
I think along those lines, there was that. They had great records. Mm-hmm. They sold a lot of records. They went on tours. I think we were getting into that, like, to your point, we were getting into that, the hip hop era, but we were also getting into like tabloid hip hop era. Mm-hmm. And not for nothing, aside from years later, the R. Kelly controversy, we never heard anything else about Changing Faces outside of the music.
Yep.
And so a lot of the people that are superstars, not only do they have the discography and the catalog to support their careers, but they also got a little bit of drama too.
Yeah.
And have some type of urban legend, behind them. Mm-hmm. We love TLC because of not only whether they had the music, but you got Left Eye burning down houses. You got them bankrupt and
right.
Selling, being the top selling female group of all time and then being completely broke. We got the Supremes, all of their lineup changes and Diana Ross being singled out. There's drama. And Destiny's Child, come on. Right. I don't even need to speak on that. So Changing Faces, I hate to say it this way, but if you like put them in a lineup, would you be able to select them out of a lineup of a bunch of girl groups from the 90s? And that's no shade to them or their music. And they had great songs, but yeah, I think that might have been part of it. And it's so funny what you were speaking of earlier about playing their music now. Remember, I told you, I said, do you think I could get away with a Changing Faces record at my Rocksteady gig? And he was like, what you mean? And J. Ray was like, what are you talking about? I was like, R. Kelly is all over all the songs, singing the hook. And he was like, and J. Ray was like, yeah, you're right. But I did find one record that was not produced by R. Kelly, that doesn't have any singing by R. Kelly on it. Matter of fact, it's Keep It Right There. That was produced by Devontae Swing of Jodeci. And, that's something. But yeah, aside from them being completely tied to R. Kelly, Changing Faces is they kind of squeak by.
They did.
Without any controversy.
So, yeah, interesting group. They didn't quite, even though, to your point, when I looked at their numbers, even their last album in 2000 hit number 9 on the R&B charts. It didn't what was it, certified, but it landed pretty high. Like people were really into changing faces. But I think you make a really good point. Putting them in a lineup would have been hard. Now, this next duo started as a trio, and I think, Sir Daniel, we have to show love to the girls album was hot.
Let me do this real quick because it's right here. So we're talking about the girls, the GYRLZ, these girls, and I've spoken about them before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've got a very long-standing history in music.
Mm-hmm.
They are part of the Uptown MCA legacy.
Yep.
Although they were never on MCA, they're on Capitol Records.
Right.
But they were part of the Uptown legacy because they started out as writers and background singers for I'll Be Sure.
Yep.
So in I'll Be Sure's classic videos, you will see the Terri Monica and Tara
Yep.
singing background and doing this number right here behind I'll Be Sure. That's them. So this came out in 89.
Is that 89? Okay.
89. Yeah. And the album came out 88, 89. And they had like marginal hits as a trio. And I love the album, you know, because that was my time period. I love them and I love the album. But they, like I said, continued writing in the industry. Monica Payne is an industry insider to this day.
Absolutely.
And at one point dated Too Short, which I found
That's hilarious.
very fascinating. But they were also writers, like I said, and wrote a lot of hits for like Father MC, anybody you can think of. They wrote a lot of hits for Soul For Real, all of that stuff. But Terri and Monica, who are
Terri and Monica,
Terri on the end, and Monica Payne, formed a duo, Terri and Monica, in the mid 90s, like 93, 94.
Yep.
And not for nothing, dope ass music.
Dope music. Like Terri and Monica, there was a mystique around them because they were so legendary in kind of the uptown camp. Like you were familiar. For those of us that were familiar with the girls, go play that girls record today. Love Me or Leave Me Alone is a dope record. Like it's New Jack Swing history. So the same producer for I'll Be Sure's debut produced that record too.
Kyle West.
Banger. Go play it. So, but anyway, they rebranded as Terri and Monica. Tara was still part of the mix. Like she was still doing backgrounds and stuff like that. But in fact, she co-wrote with them. Really, Terri and Monica is really the girls, but they rebranded for whatever reason to Terri and Monica. Because I'm looking at the writing credits, Tara co-wrote every song with them, right?
Yeah.
But there was a mystique around them. And so I remember when the video for came out, so they signed to Epic Records. Horace Brown, was part of Horace Brown was on the record. Just had a bunch of folks on the record, but the video for black and white, this hard funk groove under it. It was doing everything that a 93 song. It was you bob your head and you was kind of doing that. And everybody was in the video. So you had like a Flex Alexander, all the cool kids were in the video.
Groove Theory, all the cool kids, like you said.
Yep.
So there was this. So this is what J Ray's talking about. This look right here. Mm-hmm. So they completely rebranded. And the Kangos made a return in '94. Remember that?
Yep.
And they had to be turned to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the sisters were wearing these floor length tube dresses, and were rocking Pumas with it. So that was very much, a rebrand for them. It was hip hop, but it was still very boho chic, and they did a really good job of rebranding themselves.
Yep.
And like J Ray said, the song, for those of us that knew them, were like, we were rocking with that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't Take it to that next level.
But I think it goes back to that. I think we'll probably find a thread through all of these groups. I think you need the perfect storm of things to happen to make something pop. There wasn't a huge controversy. There was nothing controversial about Terri and Monica. You know what I'm saying? They were two black women who were singing and writing good songs with super solid production behind them. So I'm looking at the production on this record really quick. So Bryce from Groove Theory, of course. Bryce is also behind me right there because Bryce was part of Mantronics. He joined Mantronics. So that was, in fact, this is not long before he would have produced this. This is like 88 right here. Mm-hmm. So you got Bryce on the joint. Like I said, you got Horace Brown on the joint. So you have these people that are percolating. I just think it was one of those situations again where you need the right machine. You need the right kind of buzz to kind of cross over. Because at that time, it was about crossing over.
It definitely. And I also think there was this loyalty to sounding underground and staying underground. Ooh. There was that, because this was kind of like in the backpacker era of hip hop, right? And so, like you said, all the production, if you listen to it, it could easily be thrown into a set of like backpacker music. It had the boom bap movement of hip hop, and it had those boom bap beats. And so there was this like, let's stay true to that sound. And you're right, that didn't have like a universal sound, whereas, you know, at the time, like a Brandy was blowing up and crossing over. And because she had more of a girly appeal, they weren't girly girls. They weren't, when I say girls, they weren't like young girls. They were grown. Yeah, they were grown, so they couldn't play into that demographic that say a Brandy and a Monica and a TLC could play to. So they had to lean on other strengths, and that's probably why it didn't take them. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is not nothing scientific. There's no scientific research to this. We're really pontificating as fans, as people that grew up listening to this music and seeing it in real time, and just thinking, you know, like, what was it? I know y'all thought it was dope just the same way we thought it was dope, but you don't know why they didn't take it further. And now this next group, though, for all intents and purposes, might be the most successful in this bunch. For the simple fact, if your music is being sampled today, then you're pretty much, and you wrote on the album, on the record, you pretty much got it going on.
Yep.
And Brownstone were those girls. We've got the Nikki Gilbert Mass Choir, Charmaine Maxwell, rest in peace to Charmaine, Monica, Mimi, Dobie. They were the original members of Brownstone, but of course, along the line, you had Keena join Brownstone as well. But Brownstone, out the gate, first of all, they were signed to MJJ Epic. Yep. So you know there was the business.
They got the machine of Michael Jackson behind them.
If Michael Jackson is co-signing this, then it was like, oh, then they must be the real deal. And then on top of that, they can really sing.
Yep.
I mean, even on the album cover, J-Ray and I were laughing about this before we came on. On the album cover, they're literally, their heads are thrown back and you don't see anything but teeth.
Yeah.
They're like, you could tell that they were singing, screaming bloody murder on every single track. What award show was that they were on, and they were like hollering to the people?
They came out scream. It was either Soul Train. It was probably the Soul Train Awards, but they literally started with, it was for Grapevine, and they were standing in that 3-pack singing to the gods out the gates.
And you know, Grapevine starts up there. Grapevine is a high octave song already. It's up there. And they are literally singing for the people in the nosebleed seats. But they came from that school. It's like they came from that school of, you had to, people that they were unable to be front row, they needed to feel like they were still a part of the show. So they came from that school where you had to sing for bloody murder back then. So
and I think the other interesting thing about them, especially if you look at their first two hits, Dave Jam Hall was kind of an engine as well behind that, right? So you have If You Love Me, which was out the gate crazy. You have Grapevine, once again out the gate crazy. And that's really all you had. Oh, I Can't Tell You Why. They remade I Can't Tell You Why. I forgot about that. That remake
that doesn't give that remake does not get the love that it should. And that, if anybody touched an Eagles song,
yep,
they touched it and they made it their own. We don't talk enough about how they made I Can't Tell You Why their own song. And that song is beautiful. It's R&B, but sung by the Eagles. So they were able to, I can't go on more about that song, but it was just really dope. But you were saying, Jay Ray,
yeah, no, you're good. They did get a second album on MJJ. Not as well received as their first record, but that first single, 5 Miles to Empty, and Mark just jumped in the chat, that is my favorite Brownstone song. So by that time, Keena Cosper had joined. And let me tell you something about Miss Keena. Keena's solo record, if you can find it, get it. Okay? Girl from the Gutter goes from here.
Get it. Sidebar, there's like a drum and bass version of Girl from the Gutter that I can't find anywhere. When I tell you that thing goes so hard, and she fit right in. She's another one that can unhinge her jaw, and just pull her head back and just scream. I mean, a voice out of nowhere just comes all the way up. It's just a lot of very controlled but very impactful singing.
Absolutely. And Mark said it best. He was like, their voices are still reverberating from that performance of Grapevine to this day. It's true. And so the kind of answer to Grapevine was 5 Miles to Empty, where it was very similar kind of sound. The Nikki Gilbert Mass Choir for all intents and purposes. And I mean, I think the reason why they didn't go further, I think two things. I mean, definitely lineup. There were some things.
Changes.
There's some things going on behind the scenes.
Some throat issues for some members,
Throat issues, yes. Challenges that I think made it difficult for them to continue. They probably could have gone way further had some of the other drama stuff not happened, potentially.
And I'm wondering if they also fell victim to the policing of bodies at that time. They're black girls. Nikki Gilbert, all of them are ranging different sizes. And if you notice on the album covers, Nikki starts off one size, but if by the time we got to that second and third album, they were doing things to like camouflage their bodies. So there's that. Who knows? There's a plethora of stuff that was happening. I know they continue to write. That's always a plus. Continuing, especially if you're a writer and you go on to do that. But we didn't hear any mess. You know what? Okay, so here's the common thread. The early 90s was that time where PR, A&R kept a tight rein on their artists. So you didn't hear any mess unless you were like a huge A-list celebrity. So like everybody kept a tight rein probably on those camps of singers and mostly singers, and kept a tight rein on them. So that's why you didn't hear a lot of mess, or you didn't hear about people's personalities clashing and people being hard and difficult to work with until 15 years later when they join a reality TV show and you find out that they're Burzak, then you find out, oh, you're crazy. That's probably why the group didn't last long. Your screws ain't tight okay, I see why maybe the group didn't line up. I'm not saying that's what happened, but
Right.
now in the reality TV era, we get to see, you know, R&B divas. We get to see an encore where all these group members get to be on TV, and now we get to see their real personalities. Whereas back then, everything was control. Publicists had control over everything. That image, everything.
You know, and I think you're absolutely right. Now this next group, they hold a special place in my heart, my little heart. This is probably this might be, no, we got one of two of our least well-known groups, I think.
I think so.
But Nuttin Nyce was hot to me. Like Nuttin Nyce, Nuttin Nyce came of age. They're out of Sacramento, California. They formed organically. Apparently, they were a 5-piece band called Attitude that when members left, they kind of pared down to a trio and then they called themselves Nuttin Nyce. But the Nuttin Nyce sound was born out of TLC, was born out of Escape. Like their look was so Escape at the very beginning. Like you could see where the sound influences from the producers, even though they were on the West Coast, they were clearly pulling influences from the East Coast and from Atlanta.
Sure.
Yes, Trey done said what Froggy Style went.
Froggy, my absolute favorite song. It was maybe about the second single in that really, I think, put them on the map, because by that time they put them in the matching
it's like
jockey,
tight,
the jockey costumes with the tights and the boots. And I think they were influenced a lot by the whole Adina Howard Freak. By that time, Freak Like Me was an anthem. And yet again, you know, we're in this whole sexual liberation of the 90s for these R&B girl groups. And they didn't have any problem singing "I'm Down for Whatever" and then going into a Froggy Style.
Yeah.
And Froggy Style had the Atomic Dog sample. So it was going to go hard anyway. So you're absolutely right. But they still didn't manage to.
They didn't mention, and they have a very interesting trajectory, right? So Down for Whatever, I don't even remember the first release of the album. Apparently Down for Whatever, I remember the second version. So the 95 one. Although I knew the group because In My Nature was my joint. So I was telling Sir Daniel before we got on, I was doing research, you know, get ready for the show. And I hadn't heard In My Nature in so long. And so I played it and I immediately started singing. Sitting back, think about what to do. Boy, I think about calling you. Ooh, it's in my nature. I was like, that was my shit.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing how those lyrics are locked back there, and it's like it just takes a beat and you're like, oh, I remember that, and you start singing along.
Start singing it. So that was 93, right? So you get 93 In My Nature, 94 they dropped Down for Whatever. And then they re-released the record in 95. So now we get all the things. We get Froggy Style. We get what's the joint that I loved? Oh shoot, it's on that record. It's gonna come to me. But there was another joint on that record with Froggy Style that I go up for, and I need to find it.
So while you're doing that, I just had an epiphany.
Yes.
Nuttin Nyce was on Jive Records.
Yes, they were.
Who else was on Jive RCA at the time? It was a singing trio out of the Bronx.
Who else was on there?
That ran the 90s. SSWW.
Oh, they were. Wait a minute. No, they were on RCA, weren't they?
That's a
Jive that RCA. Was a subsidiary. It was Jive RCA.
So there's, you know, that there could have been some kind of, I don't know, maybe some type of favoritism, that maybe there wasn't a push as much
Mm-hmm.
as the other groups got. But I mean, we've got two girl groups singing, about the same kind of subject matters. But they similar styles, black girls. They're they're really vying for everybody's attention and everybody's money and everybody's spins.
Yes.
So I don't know. And by that, so SWV came out in 91, 92.
Yep.
And here we have Nuttin Nyce coming out in the shadow of SWV. And maybe Jive thought, okay, well, we can probably do the same thing with them as we did with SWV. And it just maybe didn't pop
Yeah.
the same way.
I think that could absolutely be true, because we only got the one record from them, by the way, and the joint is "You Ain't Got a Lot to Kick It." That's my joint. You ain't got a lot to kick it goes off.
That's so West Coast. That's so West Coast.
So that's also interesting. I think by the time that the re-release happens, we get, to your point, we get kind of the rebrand to like the West Coast look and sound. And yeah, it could be just simply one of those things where it just didn't happen. Like, because you figure from 93 to 96, they went through a lot of style evolution and trying things to see what sticks. And none of it ever really became this huge thing. They hit they topped out at number 34 on the R&B charts. So it's like, I don't know,
Yeah. It's one of those songs, it's one of those groups that if you know.
Right.
Like if you were video soul junkies like we were coming up, then you absolutely know who Nuttin Nyce was.
Yep.
But to the masses, they just did not get that kind of love. So, and then we move on to another. So here's so I have to admit, when this next group came out, I didn't automatically shine towards them because I was a Terri Monica and Tara fan.
Yeah.
Down. There was the girls.
Right.
But then Motown presents the good girls.
Yes.
And I mean, the marketing, you already knew what it was with them. They were marketed as the good girls. They wore like Catholic schoolgirl uniforms. The skirts were super high, but it was still, they were still kind of goody two shoes about it. And I just really think that they went for that. They went hard for that light skinned, long haired look.
They did.
I jokingly said that all of their promos and their videos looked like they were some AKA probates. If you look back on their pictures, it's giving green and pink all day long and pearls. But but the good girls, for all intents and purposes, they made their mark. I think Love Is Like an Itching in My Heart. If it makes sense, they're on Motown. Why not use a legacy song from the Motown archives to kind of launch your career?
Yeah, the good girls are an interesting case. Everything that you said is absolutely right. They I remember this was an interesting time too, because you would find this a lot with records. The two singles were the songs that I remembered the most from that first album. So Your Sweetness, which is a bop, was their first song. And then Love Is Like an Itching in My Heart was the second joint. But I really took to them for their second album. So I think the second single from the second album was It Must Be Love. One of my favorite songs of the 90s.
Fantastic song. Queen Latifah sampled it on her Black Rain album.
Absolutely. Just a really dope song. And there was another joint from that record, so the Just Call Me album, which came out in 92, that I really was into, called Since I Fell For You. If y'all can find that joint is hot, from the Good Girls. But so what's interesting about them too is their producer for their big singles. So Your Sweetness, Love Is Like an Itching in My Heart. I think he did It Must Be Love too. Was this brother by the name of LAJ. And LAJ was kind of a very prolific producer at that time. So he was doing a lot of the Motown stuff then. So he did MC Trouble's I'm Gonna Make You Mine, which featured the Good Girls. I Wanna Make You Mine.
Yep.
And was doing some other stuff in kind of that vein. But he's also done he also did some work with the Far Side on their first album and actually spent some time with them on tour. So, I think they got 2 records. I mean, 92 was kind of their last album. When you listen to Just Call Me, because I did kind of skim through it, it sounds very 92, right?
Yeah.
It sounds very of its time. And we also, by the time Just Call Me came out, we were post TLC at that point. You know what I'm saying? Everything was changing. You know what I'm saying? And their style of sweet R&B singing was not what people were going for. It was either your En Vogue or your TLC.
And let's face it, their voices weren't the most powerful.
Right. Yep.
They didn't really knock you over the head vocally. Mm-hmm. So if you weren't shocking us with your looks and a whole different style, or you weren't shocking us with the vocals, then you kind of got, like J. Ray said, lost in the sauce. So they had a good run. Shout out to DeMonica Santiago, Joyce Tolbert, and Shireen Crutchfield, the Good Girls. Shout out to them. Now the on the other side of the spectrum, the color spectrum, which I thought was a very, very interesting time, was BlackGirl.
Yep.
And BlackGirl got my attention off the bat. There were 3 dark-skinned sisters. And they didn't have the long flowy, they didn't have the 40 inches down to the butt.
Nope.
They went for a classical style with the finger waves, the Josephine Baker finger waves. And then I can't even remember what the very first song was that they came out with.
Crazy was their first song.
Crazy. Yep. And it was a very new jack swing.
Very much
but
so.
But then they made the anthemic 90s
song too. 90s Girl was the one. So I had to really kind of dig of all of these groups. Well, the Good Girls and BlackGirl, I think were the hardest to find stuff on. But here's what we knew. I don't know if you knew this, Sir Daniel. BlackGirl's Atlanta based.
I did know that. Yes.
Yeah, so they're Atlanta based, apparently organically formed because they were actually trying to kind of reform in 2017. But so in the wake, I'm assuming in the wake of LaFace, these 2 white men started a label that was Atlanta based called Casper Records. Okay. And they had a bunch of groups. It was, if you look at the groups like
Caper.
Records. Yeah, I said Caper. I said Casper. My bad. So Caper Records. Thank you. So they started Caper Records, and one of the groups that was signed was BlackGirl. And I think this label was basically trying to check all the R&B boxes of the time. So they had like a kid group, they had like a girl group, they had like a rap group, you know what I'm saying? And all of these things. But BlackGirl, 90s Girl was even though it came out in like 94. So we're like 4 years in at that point. But it hit a mark. It was a dope jam and it was anthemic for Black women.
Absolutely. And I can't help but notice, I'm looking at the 12-inch. They're on the RCA imprint as well.
Yep.
Again, so I don't know all the girls, like all you girls that were on RCA at the time, you had SWV to contend with, and SWV was not budging.
They were at the top of the charts.
I mean, up until about '99, right?
Yeah.
So if you were on that label, SWV was probably the priority. So
Oh, Sir
if you were
Daniel,
on
I
a
think you.
subsidiary, I think I may have cracked the code. It's the RCA code for a lot of these girls. If you were on an RCA subsidiary imprint, you may not have gotten the push that you were hoping for because SWV was running things at the time.
You actually may have also answered
It's a
the.
theory.
You may have also answered the Brownstone thing because they were under Sony and that MJJ was kind of in there. Destiny's Child was Mariah Carey. You have these staple groups.
Do you see the connections though?
Mm-hmm.
So SWV got a sample cleared by Michael Jackson himself for Human Nature. So there's some overlapping here. We should probably be playing the X-Files theme music in the
Right.
background. There's some things going on back here, and and Nikki Gilbert was probably writing for other people at the time. Stuff was
Yes.
happening.
Stuff was happening.
Stuff was happening.
But
So
yeah,
yes.
Black Girl, 90s Girl was certainly a thing. So they had four singles. I don't know. I got to go back and listen to Let's Do It Again. I don't know that I know that song. Crazy, I know. But they charted on the R&B charts with all of their singles. That's actually an accomplishment. So Crazy hit number 37, 90s Girl hit number 13, Where Did We Go Wrong hit number 39, and Let's Do It Again hit number 25. They went gold with their record. So their record was not a flop, but we only got the one album, Treat You Right. They were actually nominated for a Billboard. They were nominated for 3 Billboard Music Awards. Artist of the Year, R&B Artist of the Year. 90s Girl was nominated for 2 awards, and they were nominated for 2 Soul Train awards, and they won a Vibe magazine award for best look. So they weren't a fluke.
So, but I think you answered it right there. You had so much support. You had Vibe magazine,
Mm-hmm.
whose main purpose was pushing Black culture,
Yep.
especially Black women. When you have Danielle Smith at the helm, right? You had Soul Train, which was still in circulation and still in syndication on television. You had Video Soul. You had all these different outlets, and you had Black radio.
Yep.
That was still pushing artists like a Black Girl. So yes, they were able to chart. They were able to sell gold records because they had all these platforms that eventually, one by one, kind of phased out. You had like I don't know if you guys in your prospective cities, if you had an event called for Sisters Only. In Atlanta, they had an event called for Sisters Only. I'm sure they had it in DC because I think it started in DC. But when you have events like that, you have people like Black Girl, you had your Tanya Blunts, you had people who we knew of in the 90s and who had hits on the radio, but they had those platforms to perform at, and all the major Black cities in the country. So yes, I think that might be the difference now, is that those things phased out.
Yep.
Those platforms phased out. So therefore, we no longer have anybody like pushing the nostalgia behind these particular artists anymore, unless you got samples and your sample by a rap artist and it goes crazy, or you're linked to an alleged pedophile and a convicted pedophile,
Right.
and unless you have those things going for you, you have some type of notoriety like that, then you're not going to have that kind of juice behind you like you did back in the 90s.
One more group.
One more.
Y'all know who the one more is. Jade was a thing.
Jade
They were a thing.
They had y'all stomping like y'all were in fraternities.
Yep.
The whole hoochie, the whole cut off shorts with the combat boots. That was a thing. That became a thing. You know, Don't Walk Away is an eternal summer jam. There's no getting that song screams summer jam. You know it's summertime, springtime when that comes out, when that people play that.
Absolutely. So Jade to me had so much potential. Like I feel like okay, so they're the one group on this list that was put together. So they were an assembled group. Um they had so their first album Jade to the Max, their first single I Want to Love You was part of the Class Act soundtrack. That's how we first kind of got to know them. That was their first single out the gate. But it was that second single. It was Don't Walk Away that literally lit everything up. It had everything you wanted. It had the perfect loop. It had that hard kick drum. It was so dope that that's the foundation that Q-Tip used for Award Tour. So he was like, it was Jade's Don't Walk Away that inspired the way he built the beat for Award Tour. He wanted it to have the same rumble that Don't Walk Away had. And so if you listen to Award Tour, it will remind you of Don't Walk Away. And then they did One Woman, Looking for Mr. Do Right. They did, and I forgot about this until I researched this. They did the BET Unplugged thing. I can't remember what it was called.
They sure did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they released it. BET's Listening Party is what it was called. And I think they may have been one of maybe two groups that did that. There wasn't a lot of them. But so they sang live because, back then we were still fresh out of Milli Vanilli. People had to prove they could sing.
Yep.
And they did that. And there was things kind of died down for a bit, but then we get Mind, Body, and Song. 5, 4, 3, 2, yo, time is up.
Time is up.
Which was an interesting first single. I actually think their second single would have been the better first single. Every Day of the Week, I think, would have been the better out the gate song.
And that was a bop.
That was a bop.
Yeah,
because that actually kind of saved that record. I liked 5, 4, 3, 2, yo, time is up. I thought that was dope. Mark Morales did that joint. Shout out to Mark Morales. Wow, we lost him in 2021. Wow.
Prince Marky
D. And so he did that joint, but it was Every Day of the Week from that album that popped off. And there were other joints. I still have that. I still have Mind, Body, and Song. There was this is a solid album. You can listen to it today and it's enjoyable. But I think the thing for this group was they didn't get along. they didn't get along. They were assembled.
You schooled me on this. I was like, oh, so that's what was going on back there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. But yeah, so even coming out of the first record, I think that's when the first cracks started to appear for them. And they made it. God bless them. They made it to a second album. And had this record done what the label wanted it to do, we probably would have got more Jade albums, you know what I'm saying, out of it. But I don't. And the other thing that I believe happened here from what I've read is they also weren't getting paid.
I think that's a common theme.
Exactly. Right. They weren't getting paid. They're like, when am I going to get a check? And they like, you got to recoup all of this. You got to recoup all of this hair and all of these outfits.
Hair and makeup. But I will say this for Jade. Out of all the groups that we listed tonight, I think Jade would probably, if you put them on stage right now, they would probably have the longer set list. Because I think catalog wise, they would probably have the longer set list. Brownstone is a close second.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might be neck and neck actually. Like if you put them on like an old school tour, they could definitely be like that really strong middle act that keeps the show flowing. So Shout out to Jade, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that they were. Now, you know what else I just thought about while we were discussing this? Another commonality is all of these ladies participated in the Panther soundtrack, um, Freedom, on the
Freedom.
Freedom soundtrack. They all participated in that soundtrack in the R&B version of
Wow.
Freedom.
Freedom was written by Miss Joy Gillum. We got to do a Joy show. She
Shout
is a
out to Joy
blueprint.
Gillum.
Listen.
Joy is still out here doing things and making a comeback.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it.
So one of the things we are going to do as we wrap our show is Sir Daniel and I wanted to share with y'all our favorite girl groups of all time. So we invite you to list yours as well in the chat. I have 3 and Sir Daniel has 3. Who want to go? You want to go first, Sir Daniel?
No, you can take it first.
Okay. So I'm going to run down my 3 and I'm going to tell you why I picked these 3 as a high level at the end. So my number 3 favorite girl group is En Vogue. En Vogue, them girls could sing. Like, even though they were assembled, that was the most perfect assembly of voices, and that initial 4-pack.
Shout out to Foster and McElroy. They did that.
They did that. Those women could sing. They're amazing. My 3rd favorite girl group of all time. Number 2, the Pointer Sisters. We done talked about them on the last show. We're going to talk about them again. These women are the epitome of diversity and tenacity. They went through so many lineup changes, all sisters, right? It was just a revolving door of sisters, right? But they produced some of the most timeless music of my childhood, and they're one of my favorites. And my number 1 favorite is the Supremes. These are the GOATs.
The blueprint.
They the blueprint. Like, all of these groups are following what Florence, Mary, and Diana were doing. And yeah, so they're my number 1 girl group of all time because they the GOATs.
Absolutely. I love your list. We have some similarities. So my number 3, and the only reason they're number 3 is because when y'all see who number 1 is, you absolutely understand, because I always go hard for those 3. But anyway, my number 3 is the Pointer Sisters. I echo everything that J. Ray said about them being just quintessential musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their voices are truly instruments. You're talking about groups that spanned at least 4 decades of music. And we're talking jazz, Broadway numbers, country music, R&B, rock, you name it. The Pointer Sisters embodied everything, and they just seemed, and there's a special magic, there's a special continuity that girl groups who happen to be related share.
Mm-hmm.
They share a vocal, vocal thing, that vocal cord thing that family groups share. You hear it with the Jacksons, you hear it with the Braxtons, you hear it with Pointer Sisters. There's a magic in their voices combining. So, and then they would look flawless too in all their joints. So that's why the Pointer Sisters are my number 3. Number 2, SSWWUV. SWV, I mean, come on. They came around. Think about when you were in about 11th grade, whatever group had the impact on you, I'm pretty certain they stay with you until now. And SWV is that for me. SWV provided the soundtrack to my prom. They provided the soundtrack to me riding around in my first car with my friends and doing hood rat stuff. And they ran the 90s. Style wise, they were on every magazine cover. Every black woman who was a black girl in the 90s can pay homage to SWV and Hype Hair and Black Hair magazines for whatever happened to your edges at that time. SWV was responsible for it. You all were mocking the styles, and they looked great. The nails,
Mm-hmm.
everything, and just dope ass music. The marriage, we got to thank Mary
Yes.
for showing that the marriage between hip hop and R&B can happen. And SWV took that and they ran with it. Their music is timeless, and it goes hard for for the hip hop community as well. And go ahead, Jerry.
Real quick, something real quick with SWV2 that I absolutely love is they're still working together.
Still working together.
I saw a post from Coco the other day that made me laugh because they were performing apparently somewhere and they set off this huge like explosion of stuff. And she was like, Lily grabbed my hand and I grabbed Taj, and we couldn't sing the high note of weak because they didn't tell us that they were going to do this big explosion. But what was so funny was like, these are sisters.
Sisters with voices.
Yes.
I see what you did there, Jerry.
Yes.
So I think it goes without saying who my number one girl group is of all time. You've heard me singing their praises. You've seen my Instagram posts about them. I mean, I think I have a post of a picture of them that I remember from my Word Up magazines. Salt-N-Pepa, Cheryl, Sandy, and Dee Dee are my number one girl group because I think they just had the most impact on me as far as having just the recipe, all the right stuff. The music was dope, well put together and well produced. They looked dope. They had that accessible yet fly around the way girl chic about them. They looked relatable, but they also looked desirable. They had all of that going for them. And then they were just really dope at what they did. Like music wise, they're very competent musicians and rappers. So, and then they kicked down a lot of doors. They were the first female MCs to go platinum, first ones to get were they the first female MC group to get a Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
There's not, and when you look back on it, there's not a lot of successful female rap groups. We've got Salt-N-Pepa, we got JJ Fad, we've got, you have a few, you got Latrims, your Finesses and Quisses, but none of them ever went to the heights of Salt-N-Pepa, and most recently they earned their Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. So that's my countdown. Those are my 3 all-time favorite girl groups of all time. So we love a list over here at Q Points. So, and I love that you guys are sharing your list with us. Trey loves TLC, Destiny's Child, and Escape. Mark McPherson loves The Emotions and SWV and En Vogue. Wani loves En Vogue and Janae. So this is a timely topic for all times. Girl, I don't know what it is about the magic of women getting together in the name of music, but there is undeniably a magic that they all share when they come together.
Y'all, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. This is a meaty conversation. We ended up, and y'all stayed with us for almost an hour and a half, yo. So,
listen, and we've been running our mouths on here, so thank you. Thank you so much. J-Ray, I gotta say this. While we were in the middle of the show, it came across that unfortunately Lisa Marie Presley has passed away at the age of 54.
Wow.
And earlier I saw that she had been rushed to the hospital for possibly cardiac arrest, but she's apparently passed away, and she was just at the Golden Globes. And I know that we've had our conversations about Elvis Presley on this show.
More to come.
And I know more to come, and not for nothing, Elvis Presley, of course, is an icon, iconic.
He is. And
Lisa married Michael Jackson, which created their own kind of piece of history. So sad to say Lisa Marie Presley dead at the age of 54. And that's young. That's very really young.
Definitely sending our love to Mrs. Presley. I'm sure this is wow.
Your mom outlived you.
Yep.
Think about that. Wow.
Definitely sending love there. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, just Q Points crew, for rocking with us and hanging out with us and doing all the things. So, once again, if you are an Insiders Max member, we do have Insiders Max members that are on this broadcast. You can hear DJ Sir Daniel's dope mix. He called it, what was it? Ooh,
The ooh
shalala.
la, the ooh sha la la mix, yes, because because I don't do oohs and ahs.
Please be sure, if you are interested in becoming an Insiders Max member, so you can get that as well as some other dope stuff, you can go ahead and join on our website. Please be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And make sure you tune in. If you're not following DJ Sir Daniel on Mixcloud, you definitely need to be following him over there, because he be just killing it with the Sugar Honey on the Rocks over there, and you can get your music fix. This has been a super dope show, Sir Daniel.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, J Ray, for holding it down as usual. But what do I always say, J Ray? In this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is J Ray, y'all.
This has been Q Points. We'll see you on the next go round. Peace.